Hi, I'm Krish, and welcome. Welcome to this wonderful day where we have this absolutely brilliant conversation on how do we make change success in every one of our project and organizational reality. It doesn't make a difference which part of the organization you come from, which role you inhabit. The moment you start thinking about that question, this webinar becomes important. Let's face it, much of the time our results and outcomes are more focused on getting projects done, meeting the quarterly deadlines, meeting my yearly goals, right? That's where our focus remains. What if we want to play the longer game? And that's true. That was true for me in my career when I was a manager. That's true of me in my career when I became a head, when I became a leader. Right? It doesn't make a difference at which point in my career I struggled with that question. The question was always there around me. How do I leave my organization a legacy of being able to manage change successfully, no matter what shape the change took? No matter the nature of the underlying change, no matter the nature of the project, how do I make change success possible for my team? Now that's a journey. That's a longer play. And we'd love to have answers to how to bake that into my organizational DNA. When my organization is going to have attrition, when my organization is going to have people rotating into different roles. So it's not just a question of investing a small group of people with that knowledge and then saying, okay, now you guys make the magic happen. No, this has to have a broader footprint than that. This is capability building. Now, the answer to this question comes in the form of a phrase enterprise change management. And we're going to discuss this shortly. We have a ProSci expert waiting in the wings to have that conversation with you. Enterprise change management is trying to answer the question, how do I help an organization build change management into itself as a capability versus organizational change management focusing on individual project success? ProSci is an organization that's been working on such questions around change management, such research questions around change management for 2.5 decades now. And these research insights are then taken and distilled into its methodology, and the methodology further is formed into workshops. We take that methodology and convert it into workshops that help different cohorts answer change management questions. And in that storyline, we have something called an enterprise change management bootcamp. And that's the other reason I'm so glad to meet all of you. Today is also the day we are launching Enterprise Change Management Bootcamp as a program in India. So that's the broad context of what we're going to be working on over the next 50 minutes now. The webinar is going to focus on enterprise change management being the mechanism through which we achieve change success in every project as a priority. So what do we have for you this morning? We have with us Lisa Kempton. Lisa is the lead for ProSci's research and product development team. She is a certified change management professional. She's been in the change management world for the last 2 decades. Prior to joining ProSci, she's had a hand in leading and establishing a change management practice in a large Canadian healthcare organization and has built from scratch a thriving community of change practitioners there. So Lisa has walked the talk in every sense of the word when we talk about enterprise change management. We are really, really glad to have Lisa to help us launch ECM Bootcamp in India. Lisa, welcome. How are you doing this morning?
Thanks very much, Krish. I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
It's a pleasure, and I couldn't ask for a better expert on the ECM field. Let me open with this question. In your head, what's been the experience you have had in engineering change capability in organizations while at ProSci?
Yeah, so in terms of my background and experience for the decade prior to joining ProSci, I was supporting organizations to build internal change capability. I had 2 different experiences on that front. You mentioned my healthcare experience. I also worked to stand up a change management organization in an insurance organization. 2 very different experiences. In the insurance organization, I worked on the human resources side of the business, had responsibility for all the corporate strategic change initiatives, the change curriculum and education in the organization, as well as really identifying for the executive team any organizational stress and capacity issues that I needed to escalate to them for decision making. On the healthcare side, I worked on the IT strategy and planning side of the business, and we really had all of the large scale, high risk, multi million dollar projects and initiatives in the organization. And we had a fully integrated project strategy and change practice. And I've taken a lot of that experience and I continue to work with clients inside ProSci on building change solutions that help people increase their change capability.
Brilliant, Lisa. And I I'm struck with wonderment at what you described. I've worked with a BFSI vertical before, and I can well imagine how much of a challenge you might have to shoehorn change capability building into a field like insurance, right? Um, that actually makes me wonder if what you described was the end state, right? What was the beginning state? Where did you start? How did you go to a CXO, to a head who are probably caught up with a zillion things in their day-to-day work? They have projects, they have tasks, they have meetings, and they probably have a quarterly time scale or quarterly business rhythm, right?
Yeah.
What did you share with them? What did you spell out as a journey, as a change capability journey?
Yeah. Well, first of all, you used the correct word for it. It is a journey. It is not a single event to build change capability. And I find that most organizations start on this journey because they're responding to either a pressure, a problem they're trying to solve, or an opportunity they're trying to seize. And in both cases, it was a situation where the organization was about to embark on a must win project that was a multi year initiative that they absolutely needed it to succeed for the success of their organization. And that really provided the motivation for them to say, gosh, some of our changes in the past haven't gone well. How can we make sure? How can we create some insurance, if you will, that this initiative is going to go
Yeah,
well and we're going to get what we expect?
perfect. And so that's a lovely hook, right? Where you have a ready, clear, and present project that you can play
Yes.
with. Um, I can tell you that in our end of the world, I've seen challenges occur because you have that one large, big kahuna, big,
Yeah.
massive project. But then as you embark on the journey, you have zillion other projects catching up, and then there is distraction. Right? As we embark on this journey of enterprise change management, we start seeing that the organization gets caught up with, let me ship this project through, let me ship that project through. So that's that distraction. And we've also seen that, and this probably happens more in our end of the world. You have to tell me if you've seen it happening in other geographies. The fact that sponsors are hopelessly overcommitted, meaning they are they have promised more than that 40 hours or more than the 60 hours a week to
Yeah.
multiple projects, and that leaves them saturated, and they may not know it, but the projects feel it. And
Yeah.
those are things that get in the way. Even if there's an initial commitment to enterprise change management as a journey, there is that slowdown. So one question, of course, is, have you seen that happening elsewhere? Is that common? And the other one is, keeping all this in mind, what should a sponsor plan for, or what should a leader plan for or ask for as a business case when they're embarking on this journey? Over to you.
Yeah. So specifically, I think that senior leaders who are saturated and trying to lead many change initiatives, some of which are high risk and, fraught with challenges and likely resistance even before they start, it makes sense for them to focus on building change capability because they're spreading out the muscle and they're building people around them who have that expertise, who can take some of that weight and load. It's never one person's job, it's many people's jobs in the organization. And I think for senior leaders, they're really successful if they sort of stand back and look at the journey and think about, where are we at today? Where are we trying to get to and why? And how, can we really break down annual and quarterly goals in terms of making progress towards building change capability? And it needs to also be in a really measurable way. And there's ways, at ProSci, we have really great ways to help people do that in terms of our change maturity resource models to let senior leaders know what the art of the possible is. Because a lot of people who have never done this before aren't sure of the right choices to make. And I always say that there's no one single right way to build change capability. It has to be unique for the organization, but I do believe there's also a couple of wrong ways to go about it that are not going to get the results and is going to waste time and money for the organization.
And the wrong ways are insidious, right? I completely agree with you. And to be fair, we also see that I don't know how fair a comment is this. I often see that the organization is far more focused on its own business rhythm, which means it's easier for a business leader to ask for an investment into something that's going to happen within this budgeting year, within this plan
Yes.
year, rather than ask for the organizational commitment on something that's going to span across a budgeting year and perhaps across their tenure in this role, right? And is that something you've run into? How do you help them see the budget plan ask versus this is an investment into the organization, this is an investment
Yes.
into the future of the organization? How do you help them see that?
Yeah, and I think it's a pretty easy connection to make because most leaders have had experience of getting slowed down or stymied in a change that isn't going well. And, really building change capability, you think about it, there's lots of different analogies to use. I like to think about planting a tree, right? You can't plant a tree in bad soil with no water or light and expect it to bear fruit. And so this is a lot of sometimes when we just tend to the project side of changes, but we're not thinking about how are we creating good conditions for every change initiative in the organization that's happening today, that will happen next year, that will happen the year after. It's really the investment and commitment that you're making to build change capability is really about creating good conditions for all projects in the organization. So I don't think it's an either or. I think you need to tend to both. It's an and.
It's an and. I can see that. Makes perfect sense. This is probably a good moment to go back to something you mentioned earlier, the measurability of this whole thing, right? We do know that OCM is measurable, ECM is measurable, but that's two acronyms over here, right? Organizational change management, our ability to provide structured process and tools to get one change shipped, one change not just shipped, but shipped and sustained and successful, right? Is the OCM part of it. The enterprise change management part is the building of the capability, the baking in of the skill set, the structure, the group, the function, everything into the organization's deliverables, into the organization's DNA, right? So it's a much deeper play over here. What makes OCM so tempting? What makes working on that one project so tempting as it's got a defined finish?
Yes.
I know what makes it successful. I've been grappling with, as a CXO, I've been grappling with making individual projects successful for such a long time that I know the dynamics of a single project. With enterprise change management, what are things that could make it successful? What are things that we measure when we verify progress of enterprise change management?
Yeah. So first of all, I think an ECM, you should be able to see the benefits of your project performance at a portfolio level, right? So if all of your projects are performing really well, you're going to get greater benefit realization in the organization. You're going to be accelerating your projects overall. So first of all, project performance collectively in the organization around achievements at a strategy or portfolio level is certainly one potential measure and focus. I think the other things that you can look at as well is the increase in competency and skill set in your key leaders, senior leaders, people managers, even your employees' own change capability.
Right.
I also think you can look at different measures and metrics around your your project lifecycle, even from strategy and ideation and selection of projects through to project completion, you can expect smoother, kind of more accelerated processes in there that are really focused around the likelihood of implementation and risks associated with the projects you're taking on. So those are a couple that
Makes
stand out
sense.
for me.
And I think they tick mark the different elements that make a capability a success, right? You need that socialization, you need different cadres, different cohorts, different grades in the organization equally involved in building that capability or harnessing, sustaining that capability. You also need a measure of whether the capability itself as a skill set is growing. And then you need a measure of whether both of these are creating an impact in the organization. So in what you said, I'm hearing a tick mark across all of them.
Yeah,
And
we're
Laura,
really looking at leadership, the application of change management, standardization, sort of socialization, and those competencies are kind of all the real drivers that you can use to increase your maturity. Yeah.
so Lisa, in your experience, what have you seen happening when the organization actually achieves this level of change management maturity? And
Yes.
what are two or three things that gets done earlier in the game to achieve that?
Yeah. So I think a couple of things. It becomes an organizational competency where a high degree of the projects and initiatives, particularly on the strategic roadmap for an organization, have change management resourcing that's fully integrated with the project life cycle, that's really focused around achieving adoption and usage within those projects. I think we also have a situation where leaders at all levels of the organization are really able to fulfill their role in change management and have those skills and competencies to play that out.
I think that's very, very important. Having the leaders prepared, equipped, and supported to play those roles effortlessly. You want to reach
Yeah.
that level of competence, comfort by the time you hit the pace in change management. Is there a number attached to it? How many projects run concurrently with good change management practices once you reach that level 5, once you're really good at it?
I I think it does depend on the organization. I think what's most important is specifically high risk change projects
Right.
or projects with high people dependency are the ones that I tend to focus on. So those are ones that tend to get direct change management resourcing. Sometimes things that are lower risk or don't have as high people dependency, perhaps those are things that we coach other leaders to do themselves and apply their change capabilities and leadership to those projects on their own.
That makes a lot of sense. Out here in India, uh, we have pure play end-to-end organizations that are not focused just on operations, but when we do have large scaled organizations that are focused just on operations, the dynamic changes there. No matter where in the risk quadrant the change falls, whether it's high risk or medium risk or it's low risk, uh, there is some level of governance that we need. We can never take our eyes off them. uh, we have very sensitive stakeholders who are looking for the excellence that the organization promises, right? uh, but in organizations that are just end-to-end natural organizations which have all functions within them, they are not operations or services focused. There, as you said, it's the high risk projects that take most of the attention. uh, to be fair though, every time I've had an alignment workshop and I've had leaders in the room hearing change management, they are pretty insistent that they would like most of their projects getting under the microscope. They would
Yes.
like oversight across all of them. They are reluctant to let anything, at least in the early stages, pass down or get cascaded to the rest of the
Yeah.
organization. Does that make sense? Is that what you've seen
It
too?
does. And I think that's a great validation of the fact that people naturally have experienced changes that have struggled. So when you enter an organization and you put your hand up and say, "Hey, I'm here to help you with your changes,"
Right.
my experience, you get deluged with
Oh God.
requests for support. And one of the ways that I have found in every organization that I've worked in, I've set up a resource model very quickly. This is something that I do almost right away in every sort of organization that I work with. I call this resource model the doer, broker, coach model. Again, I'll repeat that: doer, broker, coach. So we work to have change management. I'm building a team internally who have expertise in change management, and we do those projects directly. Those are sort of the must-win projects for the organization that I want to tend to directly. The broker model is sometimes, for various reasons, either capacity or there's a special expertise that's needed, I might look towards external consultants to augment my internal team. And I usually have a relationship of close folks that do that. The third group, coach, these again are these projects where maybe, they don't fit in the size or complexity to demand kind of our resources on our change professional, but we can work really closely with leaders to set them up for success and make sure we're coaching them along their process so they can feel confident and supported in that work.
Perfect. And I think that between what you said just now and what you said initially, I think you covered a good ground on what a change management office eventually does, right? It helps the organization categorize. It helps the organization understand and prioritize where attention is required. It gives measurement. It gives standards. And I think by doing what you described, the doer, broker, coach thought process, right? You're telling the organization there are very many ways to crack this nut and yet build capability within yourself. So I think those options are invaluable. Thank you, Lisa.
Well, one of those things I insist in all the time in the doer, broker, coach model is that every opportunity is a chance to build capability as well. So that's what I make sure. Even external consultants, I ask them specifically to spend time transferring their knowledge internally on change management and to leave my team and my organization more equipped as a result of their interaction.
It reminds me of every personal trainer I've ever had in a gym. Oh, you got to go down the staircase, take the staircase. I mean, you don't get there. Everything you do has to be for some muscle group. You got to do that. Is there a trend you're noticing around change management offices in the US or in Australia, New Zealand, anywhere else in the ProSci world? Are there any trends around change management offices?
I think the space has been fairly stable for a while. About all that I notice is more and more people are waking up to the fact that they need to kind of work at an enterprise level to build capability, that it's not just that project by project case. So I just see more of them today. It used to be there was a really small group of us. Like, I know people from lots of different sectors who do this work and we connect on a regular basis. Now it feels like that community is growing. But the other thing that I notice is some of these capabilities are set up adjacent to other capabilities. For example, my organization, I described a project and change and strategy practice. Other people have a change and a Lean Six Sigma and a process improvement practice. What I notice is that organizations also find a way to connect their change practitioners with other related disciplines that support the same project's initiatives. So I gave an example of where I used to work in an integrated project and change practice. Some organizations couple their change practitioners with maybe their process improvement or Lean Six Sigma folks. Sometimes, an example, even in the assurance, we worked really closely with our organizational development consultants. So I find organizations come up with different mixes that work for them. And that's about the only new trend that I'm seeing, is different types of coupling of those kind of related disciplines.
It makes sense that the organization is placing multiple bets and would like the bets to interact, right? Would like more cumulative knowledge to be gathered, because eventually they're all about improvement, right? They're all about redesigning and rethinking the way we do things. The other element is, so what makes this ECM journey a success? What are the factors that you take into account to help such a journey, such a project, such an enterprise change management project become a success? What would you tell the CXO to keep take into account?
So I think there's a couple of things that people who succeed in the space do really well. And I think the very first off is to make sure you have pervasive leadership and sponsorship for building change capability in the organization. We still say in change, leadership sponsorship is the greatest contributor to change success. And I
Yeah.
think that's very true in this work. And I think you can get that particularly if you do a lot of co-creation of your approach for how to build capability with those leaders so that they're invested in it. So I think that's quite important. I also think it's important for those leaders to be very clear on what success looks like for them. And because sometimes this can be a longer term investment, I think they need to break down those goals on an annual basis and
Right.
set them alongside their other business targets. A couple of other things that we do, and we call this approach at ProSci show, not tell. A lot of people want to come in and talk about the value of change management, but the value is best experienced. So successful organizations will often choose a demonstration project to prove the value of change management. I think that's a fantastic strategy. Probably one of the last things that I can think about is making sure that there's structure and intent, and somebody is leading the efforts to build your change capability, because it does take a structure and intent, different strategies and tactics, and it isn't, again, an event. It's very much a journey that an organization would likely be on for a few years. Even if you reach a high degree of capability, then your conversation starts to shift to how do we maintain it, right?
Yeah. It makes perfect sense. I think that last point you made is something I see repeatedly. Most of the organizations that I see out here are at scale, right? We're talking about numbers of employees that are easily in the thousands. In which case, the need for that capability, at least in the earlier days, to be nurtured and then perhaps steered before it can be taken for granted, and then a community gets built, a COE gets built, and so on and so forth. For that whole roadmap to become actualized, we do need to have someone as stewards, as someone who's helping that change flourish, right? That thought process flourish. And yes, I think those early proofs of concepts, I need the early pilot projects, the early lighthouse projects, as we used to call it in Lean. You need them. You need them to show that this actually does work, not just to that senior leadership that along with you signed up to this, but also to all those middle managers, right, who are seeing God knows how many capabilities being rolled out through the organization, that this is real. This is something that can actually help them in their workplace, help them to achieve success in their projects. So I would completely agree with that.
Now, Krish, I'm a bit curious because I kind of shared with you some of the things that I've seen in my career. Can you relate to those in India, or are there some slight differences that you see in your geography?
Not very many, Lisa. The way we see it is we still have organizations that are capitalizing, they're trying to capitalize on the post-COVID world. There is an urgent need for businesses in India to scale up. There is an urgent need for middle managers and for senior leaders to have, I won't say build a better mousetrap, but definitely rethink the way they are managing this brilliant workforce they have. So in terms of opportunity, we are in the right place. And in terms of making that opportunity visible to leaders, the factors that you just called out are the exact same factors that leaders in India are worried about, right? Is this measurable? Can I see results? Can I see results before I continue to bet on this? It's not only me seeing the results. Can the organization see the results? Is there a way to perpetuate this? Is there a way to keep this running? How do I sustain this? The factors that you called out, I think, are endemic. If I'm running a business and I'm responsible to stakeholders, either here or elsewhere, those are things I must sign up to. So bang on target. Absolutely no modification on what he said.
Organization, I don't know what it's like for you, but in the West right now, the ability to attract and retain talent is huge right now. And change management also, is a driver of engagement. It's a driver of retention. People don't want to be, sitting in a low productivity dip for a long time associated with change. So that's a driver as well, that competitive difference for talent.
That's a good one. Yeah. I agree that I think I would connect this with the speed of trust you made earlier. the biggest thing I've seen in organizations that practice change management well is an increased respect and trust for the senior management. The organization is willing to be led by the senior leaders because they say they don't just chuck the change at us, they are with us and helping us succeed at the change. It's our change. It's the whole pyramid is involved. And I think that makes a huge difference in retention and having the talent wanting to work in the organization they are in. I would agree with that. Um, well, broader question is
Sure.
all this is the goodness of having this, right? Going back to where we started, we talked about OCM and ECM. So why should I have change management as a capability? First, there are a zillion other competing capabilities I could have, right?
Yeah.
And two is, doesn't it just take longer? This just feels like doing this over and over again till I get it right. Isn't it easier for me to just do it on a project basis and move on?
Yeah, we always say change management takes change management. Um, there's some limitations to just working towards building capability one project at a time. And really, again, if you sort of think about the analogy of planting a fruit tree, right? It's like planting a tree in cement and expecting it's going to bear fruit. Um, when
Right.
you're a change practitioner working in a finite project with a beginning, middle, of an end, you're really concerned about the scope and delivering on the scope of that project. When you notice things in the organization that impact your change, like, hey, there's two other projects that are impacting call center employees at the exact same time. Sometimes you're pretty limited in your project governance structure to address those change saturation or collision issues or influence. Oh, hey, we would really, benefit if our leaders had better competencies, but in the scope of your project, it's not important for your project manager, your sponsor at the time. Maybe they don't have funding for it, et cetera. So you find that you can do a really great job, but you also are constrained by the conditions in the organization. And when the conditions get better, all projects get better. And so I think that's one of the differences that I experience. You can do a lot of capability building work through projects, but at some point you're going to find that limiting, and you're going to want to be able to work in that in between space.
Right. I can relate what you're saying again. Uh, I'm a, I'm a big believer in systems dynamics. I've used system dynamics in much of my work. And one thing you learn is most systems are perfectly designed to provide the results they are currently providing. You
Exactly.
got to change the rules. You got to change the underlying assumptions in the rules for something to change, right? And that is worth doing because, like you correctly said, once you change the base, everything that's built on the base changes. Every project that then gets fostered in that new environment gets the benefits of doing change really, really well. And of course, uh, as you pointed out earlier, employees get the benefit across projects. It's not a project dependent thing. It's not just about this constellation of really, really bright guys coming together and doing this project well. It's not that. It's just that this is how we do it. We do it. We do change really, really well, and change success is not an option. It's a priority, and I think that thought process is really worth the journey.
Mhm.
Lisa, that makes a lot of sense to me. What would you call as your closing comments on this?
Um, Actually, something you just said, which is really interesting, which to me brings up the importance of the mindset. So I think I said at the beginning that there's no one right way to build change capability. It's every journey is unique to the organization, their culture, their leadership competencies, the nature of the projects that they do. But there's a couple of wrong ways, and I mentioned treating it as an event or just simply training 20 people and thinking you're going to completely shift the dynamic and your performance around change in the organization. I think the other potential failure route is treating it like all I need is a tool set or some new templates. I see organizations early in their journey get really focused on their methodology or tool set or templates, thinking that that is the magic sauce.
Right.
And I want to emphasize that change management takes tool set, yes, to attend to the change process, but it takes mindset as well. And it's really the two together. So if you're just focused on tool set, but doing nothing to shift people's mindsets around preparing, equipping, and engaging people, or really putting your sights focused on adoption and usage instead of technical installation of change, then you're still not going to get the results. So I would encourage every organization to think about cultivating that mindset along with good processes and good tool sets and good people.
Makes perfect sense. It's not the rituals and ceremonies. It's got to be more. There's more underneath it. Completely agreed. And we need the leaders to buy into that first. Lisa, thank you so much for clarifying much of enterprise change management, much of the journey itself. I think what you said will resonate hugely with CXOs who are listening to this, leaders who are listening to this conversation. And I think this was a beautiful launch, a beautiful way to launch Enterprise Change Management Bootcamp in India. Thank you so much for this.
Yeah, you're welcome. Happy changing. It's really a journey that's worth it, and certainly the impact that you can have in your organization and on people and your own clients and customers is amazing. So wish you all the luck in your journeys.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks.
And there you have it. That was Lisa Kempton helping us understand what it takes to be a successful leader in bringing your organization along on an enterprise change management journey.
Hello, everybody. This is Sudeshna here from Mark Business Transformation. Thank you for joining us today, and we are indeed delighted to announce the launch of ProSci Enterprise Change Management Bootcamp on the 25th of November. Please reach out to us if you need any further info. Without losing any more time, Krish, we are seeing a set of engaged participants here and a lot of interesting questions. You ready for it to take the questions?
Yes, just fiddling with the camera for a second. Something happened and it's not letting me switch on the camera now. But good to go. Oh, there you go. I think I can see myself. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Brilliant.
So,
Over to you.
yeah, the first question which has come in is building ECM capability is a multi-year investment of time. How does a business leader prepare a case to make his organization engage in this?
Damn good question. I'll start with the need for change management, right? It should be preferably a clear and visible change, at least at the CXO level, at the business leader level, right? They're able to look at history of change and say, this was not optimum, we should be doing it better. They should be able to see the fact that they're not necessarily failing at most of the changes that they touch, but they're not giving them all the results that they need. So that's one thing. So that it's not just a leader saying it, but they're able to make that need for change management as a capability visible to multiple leaders. They're all seeing it in their different functions, different contexts. That's one very critical thing. The other thing is get the alignment on the future state. So this is where we are. What would we like? And because there are a zillion ways, as Lisa was pointing out, there are a zillion ways to do this right? Which include getting outside help, which include getting your big complex projects the help attention that it needs, which includes getting some of your best and brightest to work on some of those projects. What's your future state? Do you want this to be something that's percolated across the organization? They want different roles in the organization to be doing this naturally as a part of their competencies, as a part of their skill sets. That's the enterprise change management voyage, right? To have standards, to have governance, to have processes that are readily tracking the change, tracking progress during the change, supporting preemptively challenges faced during change, right? All those things come to fruition if you take this route, which is perhaps the more strenuous route, more work required. I'm not saying it's longer, it's not necessarily longer, but more hard work and energy needs to be put into it. So that's the second part. Is there a clear and visible need? And is this the capability you're looking for, right? The making the case for it then naturally comes from example projects. That's the third leg of the stool, if you like, right? The third element. Till now, we have been facing this. We would like to be there. And here are a set of projects, the set of commitments, set of organizational priorities that urgently require our attention. If I have these three on my plate, I can then create a case around the fact that This is what we have been doing. This is where we want to be. And here is an opportunity for us to do this well with these cases which are too hot to be left on their own. Let's get moving, right? I think if the business leader can start with these three things, they probably have a good hearing from the audiences. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And to add on to that, how we are kind of quite used to get those quick wins, but here we are
Mm.
talking something a little more long term. So how does the leader sustain the interest of this over the prolonged period?
Yeah, that damn good question again, Sudeshna. Uh, I'm going back to what we say in ProSci, right? Change management takes change management. Lisa made mention of it. The key thing about a change management journey is helping people understand how we are doing, right? Track the progress, track the milestones, and also always try and preemptively answer the question, no, we're not there yet. We are not there yet. We have to do this, they have to do this, right? Now, if I'm taking this into the enterprise change management journey, then upfront, I need to help the organization understand that this is the journey. These are what the various milestones are going to look like. This is how we are doing. This is the different levels of progress that we are seeing, right? So it's the classic, it can be the cup is half full now, three quarters full now, we're almost there. Make it visible, make it loud. Now, for that to happen, you need to have a sponsor who understands this. The leader who is bringing this capability in should understand the length of this journey. Should, again, the length should not freak us out, right? I've seen organizations that go through ECM and move through levels of change management maturity very quickly because the organization is well aligned. So when I say length, don't think of it only in terms of time. It need not always take long calendar months. It can also be about the scope of the involvement, right? Number of leaders that get involved, number of functions and silos that get involved, right? So if you're putting in that kind of effort and if you have these progress markers, you need a leader who's able to shepherd this change through the journey, retain the alignment, help the organization understand, no, not yet, no, not yet. Success one, success two, success three is still not done. Here's success four, five, and six. So, Vishnu, your question was all the more important because some of these successes are not necessarily going to be about the project. They're going to be about the structure that we are creating to keep change management going, to sustain this, right? So I might create a change agent network community. I might create a community of experts, right? I might want to create that community of practitioners in my organization. I might need to socialize it. I might need to change my governance standards in, say, project management, governance standards in, say, finance, to help them understand projects of this size need to come in, right? So some of these changes are going to be the structure of the organization, and that too could take time. Put all this together, make it very visible, help the organization understand the milestones, and that should help us to not call success out too early and therefore jeopardize the journey. Over to you.
Yeah. And I see a lot of questions on the first step. So,
Mhm.
not like as asking as to how does the organization take that first step to start this journey into change management? So maybe in one way they are asking that the first step to start change management, and the other way maybe also you answer the first step to ECM.
Right. Both are fair questions. And I think in the conversation that we just had, we talked about OCM and ECM, right? OCM being us fashioning sustainable success out of a single project, in a single project. ECM being making that a capability in the organization, right? So let's take the first one, organizational change management. If I want to, what's my first step in a project of ensuring that change management gets done well? It's the same thing again, helping the project's sponsor, the project team, and ourselves understand what is the need for change management in this particular project. Right? It's likely that I'm doing a project where the organization already feels the need for the change. Uh, the nature of the change is technically driven, and essentially, people do not have to change the way they think or the way they behave. So long as neither of these are getting triggered, maybe I don't need change management, right? So first, make sure you understand change management. Make sure the organization, the project team, and the sponsor both understand what is the kind of change management required and where is it required. Which element of this project is going to trigger that need, right? So if I'm changing my business where I'm having everything, all my applications getting onto the cloud, Yes, the technology team is going to get affected a lot, but perhaps business users don't get affected initially. Perhaps, right? Because so far as they're concerned, they're transparent with, they just machine works, app works, I'm in a good place, right? But maybe that's not your change. Your change is I want to move to the cloud and then offer a different suite and move my business model to be a SaaS model. Ooh, now you have to get everyone involved. So understanding the change, understanding what kind of change management it needs in what layers, that's very important. That's your first step, right? Once you nail that down and you understand why the change management is required, why project manager and sponsor need it, we are in a good place. That's from an organizational change management storyline. Even between the project team and the sponsor, I'd probably go to the leader first and make sure that we are aligned to what is it that the leader wants out of this project. I've had leaders who say, Krish, this particular project is just going to be a deployment. I understand the wins you're talking about, but at this point, I just need this done because there's a regulatory agency saying, do you have these rules in place? Is it done? And so on and so forth. So all those nuances of what does the organization need and what is the leader of this change project prioritizing those needs is extremely important. That's where I would start the ball rolling. That's for a project that's absolutely new. If it's a project that's already running, then I would go to metrics, I would go to numbers, I would go to see, are people buying into the change? Are people beginning to adopt to solutions being offered? Are people maintaining that interest? Adoption, continuing utilization, ultimate utilization, and how good are people at it? Those are numbers I would look at to see whether this project that's ongoing, I didn't have a chance to get in the beginning. In this project, is there something I can do as change management? I would again take that back to sponsors and project managers. That is organizational change management. Enterprise change management, like we just discussed, I think the best place to start is how are we doing? In which projects do we typically struggle? Is it about large projects? Is it about projects that are across different locations? Is it about projects that are across functions? Is there a pattern to this? Where is the challenge? What happens when we finish a project? Is it always at go live? Is there a dip in utilization after go live? Do we tend to do the same projects over and over again? It's good to find out what are your pain points. The opportunities will always be there, but it's good to start with where are your pain points, and then where are your opportunities, and then again back to having a leader for this change. Identify which leader, which CXO you see who has an interest in fixing this. Research data from ProSci does this, right? It's been doing this for 2.5 decades. So the capability need can be seen by maybe the CEO's office. It can be seen by project management teams. It can be seen by HR teams, OD teams. Right? It can be seen by specialized teams like, say, the process excellence team, right? Or maybe a new agile coach who comes and says, hang on, this is not the way it's working. So there could be leaders already who are seeing this pattern, and then we are going there to propose this as a solution. Sudeshna, I'm sorry that was long-winded, but did that help?
Yeah, and we do have follow-ups on that as well. Is in the sense that the OCM can be, if we have started the OCM journey, can we start with ECM, or is it sequential, sure, or like, first we try to have some wins with the OCM and then go into the capability building journey?
Great question. I'll break it up into two parts. One is, again, I keep going back to data. We're end of the day, ProSci is a research organization, so it's good to go back to data. And there isn't statistically significant data in my head that from the ProSci research that points to a big bang approach always works, or a proof of concept always works. So there isn't a guidepost on that. It's a function of where your organization is. So that's on the project size and project context and the mechanism itself. Should I do OCM or ECM first? If you notice the way we're setting up ECM, it's not going to be just, okay, enterprise change management capability, everyone go for training and we're done. Not at all, right? We're starting with history. We're defining the future state, the ambitions really, really well. And then we're looking at a cluster of projects upon which we are going to do change management. So in doing enterprise change management, you will be practicing change management on individual projects also, right? The red thread, the commonality among all those projects is they are now a portfolio that we are managing. We want to get these first dozen projects, 10 to 12 projects, all succeed, and they're going to be perhaps across the length and breadth of the organization, which is going to allow the propagation of change management. So ECM is by itself, it's going to include that hard work on each project. The advantage you have if you've done OCM before is that you already have a proof of concept. It's easier to explain to other leaders that this is worth doing. Look, this went really, really well. Wouldn't we like to duplicate these efforts? That's the advantage you get if you do if you've already been doing OCM, you already have skill sets in the organization. You probably already have practitioners. You already have methodology. All that is true. So there is that benefit, right? Um, I guess the most important part is, like it or not, most organizations are doing change management in some pockets or the other. They may not call it change management. They may not apply jargon on it, but they are doing change management, right? It's just not called change management yet. So, frankly, rarely are you starting ECM from zero. There is always some existing expertise, interest, knowledge in the organization. And that's one of the lessons we have learned in enterprise change management as ProSci, that we need to go where the energy is. So you rarely start ECM from scratch, right? You could go either ways. It depends upon where your org is.
Fine. Again, coming back to the OCM, ECM, and interestingly, somebody is pointing out what are the pros and cons. So coming from ProSci, we would not like to highlight cons, though. But still, if you can, just come up with OCM, ECM, pros and cons of both.
Sure, but pretty contextualize that for me in some form. So pros and cons vis-a-vis what? Pros and cons.
So I would assume the question has been put in terms of, if you are doing only OCM or only ECM, maybe that way we can take that question.
Fine. So, So the good things about doing OCM is that there's a define start, define finish. Everyone knows what's happening. There is a core group that always has a clear idea on, are we done? We're not done. We need to do this. We need to do that. So there is that almost collegiate team atmosphere, right? There's this core group that gets it. There is a war room that's running. You walk into the war room. Everyone is talking the same language. We all know how this engine is working, what we need to get out of it. Demands, accountability, debates, discussions. It's very lively, right? OCM, that way, there is a far greater common shared clarity among what we call as PCT, right? What we call as a trifecta between sponsors, project teams, and change managers. Right? In ECM, this is something that needs to be fostered, right? Because you're going to have different projects running concurrently. You need to have good governance. You're going to find the sponsor, the project team, and you're going to have different project teams cycling through it. You might have different change practitioners cycling through it. You'll have to connect with multiple sponsors. So with OCM, you're going to have a lot more, to that extent, heavy lifting. A lot more time being spent on alignment, right? A lot more time spent on not just alignment one time, but as a continuing activity. Both of them are equally measurable. Measurability is not a challenge. In both cases, you have a set of numbers that are going to tell you going well, not going well, etc., etc. We're going to be measuring progress of change management as well as progress of the change in both of them. That's not very different. In terms of resourcing, obviously, ECM touches the enterprise and OCM touches the project's scope and the project's footprint. So there is a difference in the degree of disruption, if you like, that's going to be caused by OCM and ECM. But that's not because of OCM and ECM. It's just a matter of scale, right? ECM touches the organization. And again, you can do it on a phased approach. From the cons perspective, I think OCM, it's easy for people to stop working on it once go live happens. Go live has happened, it's working. In fact, very, very honestly, training has happened. Training has gone well. Everyone seems happy. We're good to go. So it's likely that unfortunately OCM efforts on change management stop earlier than they need to be and they don't get sustained. With ECM, that doesn't happen because there is a plan that takes through every step of the journey, and we're not done till it's stuck. Right? To be honest, that's true of OCM also, but the system kind of tends to love that training date, soft go live, hard go live, and hypercare and bye-bye. Right? So the system kind of works in that front. What else? In terms of the attention it needs from the organization, obviously ECM is something that needs more attention from the organization. But that's why we do it. We do it because that capability is worth having. In my head, those are the big ones. Sudeshna, do you think I missed anything else that you'd point at?
No, I think we are well covered. We have a few things on the sponsor. Maybe on the sponsor selection as to how you choose the right sponsor. And how do you make the top management kind of understand the importance of change management? Maybe they are calling change management in or they are thinking that is taken for granted. In some
Right.
Indian context, we see that, right? Many a times that change has been a constant. So why do you need a discipline by itself? So how do you make the top management like really take a step towards it and making it a big thing, change management itself a big thing?
Yeah, fair point. I'm going to point to another important element of ProSci, which is ATCAR. ATCAR as a model is very powerful, and it is fractal in nature. I can use it for individuals, I can use it for tasks, I can use it for organizations, right? So what does ATCAR say? It says to start with, if you're trying to engage with someone and support their journey from current state to future state, start with awareness of the need of the change. And I would start exactly there. Is there a sponsor? Let me go back, right? Is there an organization goal that is suffering because change management is not there? Is there a KPI that's in trouble because change management is not there? Is there a particular leader whose function, whose silos constantly gets getting beaten up because change management is not there? Where is the organization's current reality? Trust me, organizations have been in this play for a long time, where a capability comes along, everyone is writing about it, everyone is talking about it, and everyone wants to get into the bandwagon, right? And that takes us to strange places, but most of the time it doesn't give us everything we wanted. So start with how real is this change and go to the person. Don't think of top management as groupthink, as people who are having the same brains, same minds, same experiences. Not at all. There are different leaders over there, they have different tenures in the organization. I would start there. Start with a sponsor that is feeling the pressure of not having this change happening. Perhaps it is a function. Step one. Step two, it has to be a conversation. The mistake I used to make as a middle manager in my career was, I got 30 minutes with this big boss. I've got this one shot to impress them. I got 3,000 slides with all kinds of cool graphs, right? That is that won't work. ATCAR, it's actually a K, right? Leave that aside. I think the conversation gets missed out. I don't get to hear what they are thinking. I don't get to, I know what I'm selling, right? But I'm not hearing what is their view of the current state. And that brings me to another point, which is perhaps now is not the time for it. Maybe the time for it is 3 months before or 3 months later, right? Understand that. So make it a conversation. Bring awareness of need of change. Make it a conversation, right? Third part is persistence. If the leadership has not yet seen it, they have skepticism, they have concerns, they have heard the silver bullet of very many things in the organization's past, and they don't want to cast their final chance on this. Persistence is important. And while you're pushing on the persistence, while you're going back to them multiple times, also keep your OCM story running. Make sure that individual projects are getting the benefit of change management and they are doing a really, really good job. Let the metrics show. Again, Lisa was talking about show, don't tell, right? Let the numbers show it. Let the fact that we can do this really, really well turn up. I would start there. Back to you, Sudesh now.
Yeah, Krish. So, Krish, we are almost going towards the end. So,
Sorry.
I would round it up with the final one, saying that, like, at this point of time where we are seeing the need for change management the growing, and especially it has accelerated, we know, post pandemic, meaning what do you think an organization and at an enterprise level will miss out if they do not have OCM and eventually ECM?
The first thing I can point out, which is something we've all faced as employees, as professionals, is change saturation. As I said earlier in my conversation, when Lisa was there, we're having that part of the conversation. We are in an environment where technology allows us to do anything everywhere. Technology makes a promise that we are always available. And that similar promise is being extracted from organizations. Organizations have to be always available wherever they are in the globe. Regulators expect organizations to be flawless wherever they are in the world. Customers expect organizations to be always present and available and empathetic towards their needs anytime, anywhere. And that's the environment in which the employee is in the middle of that storm, getting hit by all those expectations, translating to the employee's own ways of work. If you do not have change management in some form or shape, you are going to have a struggle with helping employees succeed time after time after time. And that has a bearing on attrition, that has a bearing on internal growth, that has a bearing on the organization's organic growth. Inorganic growth is always possible, but organic growth is going to be the first thing that gets it. So change saturation from an employee's perspective, organizational saturation, which is both the sponsor saturation and change collision, where different changes start stepping on each of those toes and everything becomes important. Nothing gets measured, and eventually we're doing the things over and over again. Technology unfortunately makes it easy for us to redo things, but doesn't take away the cost and the pain of doing that. So those are some things that I would expect would happen. To be fair, Sudeshna, I'm calling out what are happening. We are seeing this happening with our clients.
Perfect, Krish. Krish, we have neared almost to the end of our hour with everybody, and it's great to see a very glued audience throughout the session. So once again, I Lisa and you, thank you for the engaging conversation, and thank you everybody for joining us today. And reach us to us for any other information, and we'll go through all the questions we've received today. And if any question has not been answered, we would ensure that we get back to you. So thank you once again.
Thanks, guys. Have a wonderful day.